High above the tree line, where oxygen fails and the wind screams like a dying animal, something moves in the storm. It is a massive silhouette, exhaling heavy, rhythmic clouds of breath before vanishing into a wall of white. At these extreme altitudes, temperatures plunge so low and the air is so depleted that biologists consider the environment a literal death zone for large mammals. Biology simply cannot sustain immense caloric needs here. Yet the indigenous populations of the Himalayas have continuously shared this punishing, frozen space with an entity they call a Meh-Teh. The modern Western perspective looks at this creature as a cryptid, a monster to be captured, or a massive hoax waiting to be empirically debunked. But viewed through an Eastern lens, the conversation shifts entirely. The people who actually live on the mountain do not debate whether the creature exists. They describe exactly what role it plays in their environment. To understand this shadow in the snow, we have to look past the modern headlines, fill the historical vacuum, and examine its true origins long before global sensationalism erased its identity. Kept alongside it was a withered, mummified hand. The skeletal structure and elongated joints defied standard classification, failing to match known bear or human biology. When Western science dismissed these sacred artifacts, the mountain people retreated into silence. A permanent divide formed between the outsiders who arrived to measure the world and the locals who had to survive inside it. That isolation fractured in 1921 with the arrival of the British Mount Everest reconnaissance expedition. The expedition pushed their camps up to 21,000 feet. At this altitude, the lack of oxygen and sheer cold make large biological functions impossible. Yet deep in this frozen expanse, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury made a discovery that broke the known rules of biology, a fresh trail of footprints measuring 3 times the size of a human's. The expedition Sherpa guides inspected the massive tracks and immediately recognized their source as the Meh-Teh. Faster, sharper pace. When reports reached Western newspapers, the press violently mistranslated that sacred local identifier. The guardian spirit of the ice was instantly rebranded under a sensational new name. The 1921 expedition did not discover the creature. They hijacked a localized spiritual reality, stripped it of its context, and mutated it into a global biological target to be hunted. The discovery of those 1921 footprints completely shattered the isolation of the Meh-Teh, inviting aggressive international scrutiny to the sacred peaks. For a century, waves of explorers followed, pushing deep into the blinding snow. They found isolated tracks and heard localized stories, but ultimately left with more questions than answers, chasing a ghost into the clouds. Even with rapid advancements in climbing technology and modern empirical science, humanity has entirely failed to secure a single definitive Yeti specimen. This continuous evasion means the Yeti operates as a psychological boundary. It stands as a firm line in the snow, representing the ultimate limit of human conquest over nature. No matter how thoroughly we map the globe, the shadow in the perpetual cold reminds us that ancient forces still exist quietly in the thin air between folklore and terrifying reality. We assumed the 21st century would be a graveyard for monsters. Between the sweep of our satellites and the relentless hum of our drones, we were certain we had mapped every inch of the unknown. But the Yeti didn't disappear. As the valleys grew crowded with human lenses, it simply withdrew. It moved higher into the jagged ice fields, climbing into the thin air where human lungs burn and our electronics freeze. This geographic isolation changed the nature of the phenomenon. The campfire stories eventually gave way to laboratory forensics and serious scientific inquiry. These mountains form an ultimate boundary line. In this high-altitude vacuum, our technology often fails, creating a sanctuary for mysteries that we can't yet explain. In 1951, the high Himalayan passes were a massive blank canvas of ice and rock. Before global positioning satellites, the only sensors capable of reading that environment were the explorers who walked it. On a glacier thousands of feet above the tree line, mountaineer Eric Shipton stumbled upon a physical anomaly. Carved into the snow was a crisp, clear trackway of footprints. This is Shipton's photograph. The ice axe provides a verifiable scientific measurement. The print's geometry poses a problem. Its toe spacing and deep heel don't match bears, and the width exceeds any primate. It suggests a heavy biped walking where low oxygen prevents sustained movement. Shipton brought back photographic evidence that forced the scientific community to consider the possibility of a large, unclassified entity navigating the death zone. Decades later, those physical tracks were matched by a witness with a high level of credibility. This is Reinhold Messner, the first person to summit Mount Everest alone without using supplemental oxygen. Messner's survival depended on mental discipline. Navigating these passes alone involves extreme physical exhaustion and total psychological isolation. During one of his solitary treks, Messner reported a face-to-face encounter with a massive creature. He described a beast that displayed an intense level of primal aggression. He arrived in the mountains as a skeptic, but he dedicated the following years to tracking what he believed was a physical predator living in the high passes. When a climber of Messner's experience stakes his reputation on a physical encounter, it forces the scientific community to weigh the possibility of a large, unclassified species surviving in the high Himalayas. The search has now moved from the freezing gales of the mountains into the sterile environment of the genetic laboratory. Scientists are now using environmental DNA, or eDNA. They extract microscopic cellular material from the melted snow where sightings have been reported. When laboratories sequenced hair samples historically attributed to the Yeti, the results provided a clear genetic path back into the prehistoric record. The genetic markers aligned with a prehistoric polar bear, a predator that science had categorized as extinct for over 40,000 years. This data suggests new possibilities. Is this creature a surviving relic of the Ice Age? Or has a branch of the hominid family tree adapted to thrive under these specific, brutal conditions? The application of DNA forensics hasn't debunked the legend. It has provided a biological profile that aligns with a real, though supposedly extinct, species. As twilight sets over the ridges of the Himalayas, the sheer scale of the terrain continues to limit our reach. The ultimate frustration for researchers remains the lack of a physical specimen. We still lack a captured body that can be formally cataloged. While we lack a physical specimen, the alignment of trackways and environmental DNA suggests a biological anomaly that has yet to be formally classified by science. The Yeti persists in our imagination precisely because it inhabits the last few regions on the planet that remain beyond our constant surveillance. As long as there are places where the maps remain blank and the wind carries a human-like voice, the legend will survive. Some mysteries are perhaps better left breathing in the dark.